Mason, Margielas, unreleased color palettes, make them all jealous. You could buy the drip, but the swag so separate. Ponytail poppy, now I sport the fade. Woke up one morning, said it's time for a change. I am one of one, my name is my name. Cartier, cedar core, vintage wood frames. Everything clear when you living in the air. In the pilot on call, press a button and you there. Or your car got a roof, press a button, disappear. On the coupe, like poof, everything I do is rare, but I swear, if you could walk a mile in my shoes, you would stop it. If you could pull the bitches that I pull, you be solid. Manifesting everything I am, I'm a prophet. And when it comes to that bottom line, I want profit. I say get down when I say you get down. I say get down when I say you get down. I say get down when I say.
What's good, people? You know who it is. It's yours truly, Kay Nellz. This is Icons and Ideas presents the world according to Kay Nellz. Got another great episode for you. Thank you for rocking with me as you continue to do. We're going to keep giving you fresh perspective. We're going to keep giving you interesting conversation. We're going to keep changing, influencing, infecting the school of thought for an entire generation. Here we go again, episode 13, baby. This one, I try to, as I told y'all before, I try to be open and honest in creating a nice balance, right? I like to talk about more serious topics that we need to be informed on. And I also like to balance that out with some, color commentary on what's going on in the entertainment landscape or hip hop or sports or so on and so forth. This one is a few things that came over the horizon that I just wanted to talk on that are more pressing issues that I feel like, because there's so much misinformation out there, as I like to echo the sentiments of Denzel Washington, the unintended consequence of too much information is misinformation. And we live in a time now where there is so much information out there. Sometimes it's very difficult to discern what's real information and what's not. And it's tough. But you have to be aware, and it's our duty and our responsibility as individuals to kind of weed through the BS to be able to put ourselves in a position to know what we're dealing with. I'm gonna take you back to a couple pods ago. If you remember when I was talking about the election, it was the election episode that I did, the election recap. After seeing how everything played out, I shared with you that the most dangerous man in the political landscape at the moment is Elon Musk. And I expressed that, and then I created the parallels, and I explained how he just ran the Cambridge Analytica play. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I talked about a lot. Check out the episode. I forgot exactly which number it is, but I'll be sure to get that episode number for you so you could go back and reference it. But in it, if you remember, Cambridge Analytica, it was a data collection company pretty much that sourced a lot of data about a lot of different people. I told you the greatest commodity right now is information, is data, is metadata. Most of the most valuable companies in the world are not only valuable for the goods and services that they provide, but they're valuable for the amount of data that they house as well. With that being said, Cambridge Analytica was acquiring data of people and then using it to run political misinformation campaigns that influenced the 2016 election. And there's a whole documentary on it, I believe on Netflix, that you can check out to get a more in-depth understanding of the extent to which they were able to influence the election one way or the other, or create so much disinformation that it altered the outcome. With that being said, Elon Musk, as I explained, in my opinion, looking at how everything played out in hindsight, his whole motive for acquiring Twitter, the social media platform, was to create a silo in an echo chamber of right-wing propaganda to offset what he feel was left-wing propaganda coming from what he describes as legacy media. He did that under the guise of creating an impartial media platform. He did it under the guise of saying there needs to be fair and balanced media coverage of the things that's most important to us, and I'm going to do that with my social media platform. And again, it's sleight of hand. I told you they don't really change the playbook. They don't really change the plays. They just change the players. With that being said, with Elon, he created a very a good marketing campaign for what his intentions were for Twitter. But that's just the sell. That's the sleight of hand. Let me keep you focused on the left hand so you're not paying attention to the right hand. Once he acquired Twitter and everything went through with the acquisition and now he's the owner, we in real time seen Twitter turn into legitimately a right-wing silo of political misinformation, political rhetoric, and political campaigns. He used the impact of the inherent racism of America, because that's what it is in truth. When you appeal to the racist undertones of America, you appeal to the far-reaching corners of rural America who disguise these sentiments as nationalism, as pride in country, as so many. We've seen all of these things before. This is not new information. The reason why I'm bringing it up now is because what we're experiencing with the budget proposal is in real time the dangers of oligarchy. And I know that's a buzzword. I get it. That's the that's the thing that creates the polarization or the division or the conspiracy. No, by definition, what we're seeing, for anybody that haven't been paying attention, there's been an attempt to, obviously every year, and I feel like this is high school civics, but our public school system failed us so much. I want to just give a brief description. So when they approved the budget for the next year, right, they go through the process. It's a bipartisan agenda. They put all the different causes and things on the table that's to be for the fiscal year or the calendar year, however they describe it, of 2025. So now it's 2024. Usually they try to achieve that by a certain date within 2024. If they can't achieve that, and usually with election years, because you have an incumbent presidency or a president-elect or a new regime change, because you have that, there is some political BS that go along that makes the process more belabored because of the uncertainty of who the political regime is going to be. So if they don't get a resolution by a certain time within a year, then they have up to the break for the Christmas time to get it done, because if not, of course, Congress go on break for Christmas, and then it bleeds into the year, and then it threatens the probability and possibility of a government shutdown. Now, keep in mind, it's important that I emphasize bipartisan, meaning both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrat, are equally involved in equally compromising to achieve the goal of determining the budget. This is a joint effort. This is a mutually beneficial effort for all the parties involved. With that understanding, they came to an agreement on a proposal for the budget. Now remember, there is a Republican majority after this election. Nonetheless, this is a bipartisan initiative. After coming to an agreement, everybody was on board. Both, again, I'm stressing this so we understand what's going on. Both Democrats and Republicans were on board. Elon Musk began tweeting his disapproval of the proposal that is agreed upon by both Democrats and Republicans for the budget. He then threatens, inadvertently, directly, indirectly, however you want to mince words. He threatens that anybody that support this bill, I'm going to see to it that in 2 years, and again, this is not the overt threat, right? This is the undertone, though. This is the implication. In 2 years, when it's time for re-election, let's just say I'm going to make sure I put my resources in a position that is going to challenge for those Republicans that are voting for this budget proposal. You're going to, your position in Congress will be threatened. And for Democrats, same thing. To create these disinformation and misinformation campaigns. And now that he has a social media platform, outside of all the other things that he has a platform upon which he can spew rhetoric. And a lot of times, this rhetoric is misinformation, disinformation, or slanted information, right? To create and control the perception of the people that he feels want to impact, and then gave a call to order. It says, call your congressmen, call your elected officials, and tell them and blow their lines up, saying that they won't have your vote in the event of the next election if they push this budget through. Now, why is that problematic? For a multitude of reasons. Elon Musk is the extreme. Don't get it twisted. These types of things, these types of power struggles have been going on, but it's been kind of a soft underbelly. It's kind of been tucked away. It's not right at the forefront. Nonetheless, this is what I need y'all to understand. This is why I say Elon Musk is the most dangerous person in the political landscape. Elon Musk spent approximately $280 million of his own money in the last election cycle to fund not only President Trump's campaign or President-elect Trump campaign, but also Senate and congressional seats as well. $280 million of his personal wealth. Since the election, Elon Musk's wealth has increased exponentially to the tune of approximately $200 billion. Now, I'm going to just talk share odds real quick and just really get into economics. If I told you you could invest $280 million and get a $200 billion return, everybody's signing up for it. But here's the thing. We're not talking about a company or a good or a service. We're talking about the entire political landscape of a country. We're talking about the control of government and government influence. This is a layered conversation. Bear with me, right? Because again, I'm just flowing with it. I got some notes that I jotted down, but for the most part, this is free verse. I had several conversations with people leading up to the election about where I stand on the political climate. And a lot of people disagreed with my position, and I was okay with that because I understood that I understand the political landscape at a level that they didn't. So when you talk about control, we have these elected officials that play puppets to the financial interest in America, the pharmaceutical lobbyists, the healthcare lobbyists, the insurance lobbyists, the, need I say it, APAC, in special interest groups in this country pay an exorbitant amount of money to ensure that their interest is served by the elected officials. Now, the whole idea of popular sovereignty, again, I'm giving you a bit of a history lesson. The idea of popular sovereignty that this democratic nation was founded on, right? Going back to the Revolutionary War and to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Popular sovereignty says the people are sovereign. That's literally what it translates to. But as it pertains to the political landscape, it means that the people vote for elected officials to represent their interests in the government undertakings, in the government dealings day to day. What we have seen that become, now mind you, during that time, I have to emphasize just for the sake of accuracy and transparency. Now, during those times, when they talking about the people are sovereign, the people that they referring to is just white men, and white men that particularly own things. And then it became white men in general. And then obviously there was, over the years, it became black men, black women, women, and so many other groups. But going back to that time, it's important that I feel like I highlight that to show the evolution of where we were to where we are. Now, the idea of popular sovereignty is to give the people influence and impact, and their interests be represented adequately in the political landscape. Fast forward to today, one of the greatest threats and travesties to the political structure of this country happened in 2010. And ask me, well, what happened in 2010? Well, there was a private financial interest, I'll describe it as, called Citizens United. And they had monies that they wanted to invest to run political ads and campaigns and so on and so forth against, I believe it was Hillary Clinton at the time, right, literally just before the election. And there were specific campaign laws against those types of behaviors being exhibited, no matter who it was, whether it was Democrats trying to do it to Republicans or Republicans trying to do it to Democrats. In this Supreme Court ruling, Citizens United opened up the door for private interests and wealthy people and corporations to be able to set aside and allocate an unlimited amount of resources, an unlimited amount of money to political campaigns, to political candidates, to ensure that their interest is the interest that's being served in the event of election. The idea of what the Citizens United ruling represented is 100% counterproductive and counterintuitive to the idea of popular sovereignty. So when I was talking about my views on the election in the political race, the reason why I was so disenchanted by the political process is because I understood that no matter how much we vote as individuals, as people, the idea that our vote matters is evident now more than ever, what we're witnessing with Elon Musk, to not be true. Now, the reason why I say that is this. Now, I tell people all the time, I'm not going to encourage anybody not to vote. That's not what I do. Even in this conversation that I had with my close friends and peers, I've never encouraged somebody and said, no, you shouldn't vote. But I do have the right to feel and express the things that I feel and express when I'm asked, when the conversation is taking place and people inquire as to my perspective. I'm going to stand on that. I'm going to be able to articulate that and have intelligent conversations around my position. This is why the condition that our political landscape is in is so dangerous right now, because instead of the interest of the people being served through the elected officials, you have a financial interest that can stake a claim on a presidency, can stake a claim on an administration, and then act as a behind-the-scenes puppet, or I should say a behind-the-scenes puppeteer, controlling, moving, and influencing to serve the agenda not of the populace, not of the people that voted for the elected officials. That's the smokescreen. They use that idea to keep people engulfed in this idea that their interest is being represented, when in true, it is not the interest of the people that's truly being represented, but the self-interest of the oligarchs, the corporations, the multi-billionaires that spend endless amount of monies and resources to infect and affect the outcome of the political landscape. This notion is evident by Elon Musk tweeting idle, I'm not going to say idle, that's not the word I want to use, tweeting threats in his disapproval of the proposal that's a bipartisan proposal agreed upon to be signed so that the government can function as it should going into 2025. And now they're at a stalemate, and there's a probability that there will be a government shutdown because of the pressure of one individual tweeting I need y'all to understand how crazy this sounds. The idea of the vote, the idea of the elected official is to represent the interest of the people. But it's a few things I want to, because I did my due diligence, right? So when your goal as an elected official is to represent the people, one of the lies that Elon Musk told about the budget, he said the budget has a crazy pay raise for Congress. That pay raise is 40. He says a 40% increase in pay for your elected officials. Now, that's completely preposterous when the average person is struggling to just be able to put groceries on their table. So if I hear that my elected official or the elected official for the district that I live in is receiving a 40% increase, meanwhile I'm still struggling for the necessities, that is 100% problematic if it were true. The problem is it's not true. The real number is closer to 4%. There's a 4% increase for Congress. Now, we can go back and forth over the minutia of what that means and if it should be and so on and so forth. And I'll say both sides. I can understand why people will feel like 4% increase. Any increase is too much. But I'll just, for the sake of the conversation, the last time I received a raise in my career, it was a 5% raise. So this seems to be right on par with what a typical raise is for those of us that work in careers and have longevity for the places that we work. The idea that we will be okay as a country, and I use we loosely, I'm speaking on behalf of people that may not know, I'm trying to share this information. Say the country would be okay if there was a government shutdown. That's not the verbatim, that's the implication. That's what's being implied. But the reality is you have 2 million government employees that wouldn't receive a paycheck. If the government was to shut down, 2 million government employees will not receive a paycheck. The military troops, I believe it's like 7 or 8 million military personnel would not receive a paycheck. For those people that are relying on WIC, which helps out a tremendous amount of Americans because of the inflation that exists, WIC would be out, so WIC would be cut, so therefore they wouldn't be able to get the basic necessities like formula for their baby if that's the case, or food and stuff like that for the house. And this is just basic stuff. This is not anything that I just wanted to give just a few points so you can understand what we're talking about. So what Elon Musk is saying essentially is, because this bill doesn't pass my sniff test, I'm okay with the government shutting down in all of the adverse effects, because that would just be the first domino. I'm okay with everything that comes with that if y'all not willing to come to the table to come up with a better proposal. Now, mind you, this is a bipartisan proposal that was agreed upon by elected officials. Elon Musk, regardless of his wealth, is not an elected official. Elon Musk is a South African immigrant. And I use that term loosely because this is what we have to understand. He's not South African. He's a European in South Africa. That distinction is very important. He's the son of apartheid. He's the grandson of Nazis. I need y'all to understand the pedigree. This is not just tongue in cheek. Elon Musk's biological father is on record saying that the grandparents, Elon Musk's grandparents, were Nazis in Canada. This is not conjecture. This is not speculation. So you tell a tree by the fruit that it bears, and we looking at Elon Musk as fruit of a poisonous tree ideologically when it comes to the overall preservation of a general welfare for humanity. He lives devoid of that because of the indoctrination of who he is and how he was raised. And now this is one of the biggest political voices, and not only just voices, he's one of the biggest political powers in the country. This is not even somebody, this is somebody that is an immigrant of this country. The irony of the talking points, the right-wing talking points that exist in large in these political landscapes, and how so much fear they push about immigration and borders and so on and so forth, for an immigrant to be, an immigrant non-elected official to be the biggest, strongest, and loudest voice in the political landscape in America right now, is the type of dramatic ironies that you see in Shakespearean plays. It's the type of dramatic irony that you see. So this is, I want to share this information because it's important that you know what's going on and how it affects us. Now, one point I want to touch on before I moved on. Again, I felt it important to cover this spectrum because we have to be aware of what's going on. Everybody always talk about the preservation of democracy versus the threat to democracy and the polarization that has been created through the political and social landscapes in America over the last several years. 100% true. We have seen a polarization like never before. With that polarization, we have seen the political overreach now. I have to conclude with the Citizens United. Without the Citizens United legislation taking place, Supreme Court ruling taking place, Elon Musk doesn't have the platform that he have to influence the political landscape that he do now. I need y'all to understand the difference between symptoms and root cause. I talk about this a lot. If you follow the podcast, if you watch previous episodes, you know I talk extensively about root cause versus symptoms and how we are so fascinated and we romanticize remedying the symptoms and never addressing the root cause. The thing that gives Elon Musk the position to do what he do, and all others, because he's the talking point right now, but the wealth and corporations in America have too much control over everything. That's why we are using the term oligarchy. Look it up by definition. With the Citizens United legislation, it gave free reins for the type of political overreach that we see Elon Musk exercising right now. And the people that suffer most, as always in this country, it's not the wealthy people, and it's not even, believe it or not, your elected officials. It's the average American that live on or below the poverty line. It's the average working class American that live paycheck to paycheck. It's the average working class American who have to deal with the increasing inflation, the cost of groceries, the cost of fuel. All of these things are affecting our ability to be able to live. I'm not even talking about flashy, glamorous lifestyles. I'm talking about go to work every day, take care of our responsibilities, pay our mortgage, pay our rent, stash a little on the side for a vacation. These are the basic things that's being threatened. So we have to be aware of the sleight of hand. There's a lot of political theatrics going on. There's a lot of misinformation going on, because as long as I keep you entertained with the left hand, you are guaranteed to ignore what the right hand is doing. And the whole time, the only interest that's truly being served by narratives created by people like Elon Musk and other wealthy oligarchs is them. That's why he invested $280 million of his own money to receive his wealth increased by $200 billion. Keep in mind, we're talking about less than 2 months. $200 billion increase in wealth in less than 2 months. And he telling you that it's okay for this government to shut down. He's telling you that it's okay if you're in the military to not get your paycheck. He telling you that if you're a government employee, it's okay to not get your paycheck. He telling you, if you're American that rely on WIC, that you do not need your paycheck. These are the types of things that we have to be aware of. And I'm telling you that Elon Musk is the single most dangerous person in this country right now, as it pertains to the political landscape. But he is the symptom. Don't get it confused, not the root cause. He is merely the symptom, not the root cause. When we peel back these layers and get to the root cause and have real conversations about Citizens United, about real conversations about lobbyists, real conversations about corporate interests and their effect on this on this government, this political landscape, and the day-to-day lives of working class people, then we'll start to see things change. But now there is a shift taking place, and people are being radicalized, and they're not taking the BS that's been shoveled and that has been shoveled from time to time. We're not going for it anymore. People are not going for it anymore. And you're going to see, mark my words, This is not inciting anything. Let me put a disclaimer. This is my educated guess. This is my hypothesis. You're going to witness the radicalization at a level that you've never seen before. You're going to witness civil insurrection at a level that you've never seen before, because out of chaos comes order. And it's somebody behind the scenes. It's an entity. It's people behind the scenes that's manipulating the chaos to create a new order. I'm going to leave it at that. We back. You already know who it is. This is The World According to Kay Nellz. And guess who I am? Come on, man. Don't get it twisted. I'm yours truly, Kay Nellz. So, like I said, the undertone on this one is just going to be a little different. I feel a need. I live by a mantra that says, as you learn, teach, as you earn, give. And this is one of the episodes where we're going to be teaching. We're going to be talking to teachers. So it's funny. It's a great, I was talking with my mother, and we was talking about how there's a great awakening that's taking place. Earlier, I was saying, the unintended consequence of too much information is misinformation. And with it, we're in the age of information. We are in the information age. We are in the age of metadata. And with that being said, there is a great awakening that's taking place because of the amount of information that's easily accessible. Now, for the people with the awareness and discernment to be able to decipher the information and understand what it means and how it can impact our present and our future, you have a bit of an upper hand. There's talks of artificial intelligence and its capabilities, Chat GPT, whatever the discussion, it is. It's you can't deny the overwhelming presence of information, and it's creating an interesting awareness. What do I mean by that? If you pay attention to social media, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, I'm starting to see more and more videos about history and how much of history has been whitewashed. And it's amazing because that is juxtaposed to a political talking point that is, as I mentioned before in the previous podcast episode, when Trump was talking about schools, defunding schools that teach accurate versions of history, like slavery, because slavery in America did exist, like Jim Crow, separate but equal, like all of the accuracies of history. If the public schools are teaching these things, they will be at risk of being defunded by a federal government ran by yours truly. Donald Trump and the people that support him. The reason why I bring that up is this. It's amazing because my mother would always say the truth prevails. And it's evident. The truth don't need no cosign. It don't need no, rallying cry. It just needs somebody bold enough to stand on their square and tell it. And so that's why you see more and more people, and this is not just, I watched a video talking about the Victorian era that just went viral recently on Twitter platform, but it's a video from TikTok. And all of this content is shared across platforms. But they was talking about how we romanticize, and by we, I mean white people, romanticize the Victorian era in Europe and all of that. And then they began to juxtapose that and list all the atrocities that took place during the Victorian era. And the caption was, you probably wouldn't have survived the Victorian era. And the amount of complete filth that the Europeans were living in is inexcusable. But those areas and those times get romanticized to keep and maintain the narrative that the Anglo-European was the standard of excellence. And there's far too much information coming out now that disproves all of that, because you can't hide the truth. And the truth will always come out as long as somebody is honest and willing enough to tell said truth. It's not anything that I've been made aware of. Salute to my parents. Salute to the tribe, the community that, whether it's aunts or uncles, grandmothers, whether it's, the local Islamic masjid, whether, my pops had a few Muslim homies in Baltimore that he was cool with, that I was around as a kid that taught me to understand what it is to have a sense of pride in who you are as a man and as a black man. So I walk with that. I lead with that pride and I lead with that understanding. So I share that to say I've been aware of a lot of the misinformation from a child. And I want to give a shout out. It's a spot in Baltimore called the Blacks in Wax Museum. If you are in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area and you've never been to the Blacks in Wax Museum, but you've been to the Smithsonian, that's low key the part of the problem. It's nothing wrong with going to the Smithsonian. As I said, it's nothing wrong with going to the Smithsonian. I highlight that to say it's so important that you go to the Blacks in Wax Museum because for me, my parents took me to the Blacks in Wax Museum. I'm talking about super young. I may have been 6, 7 years old, elementary school young. And they have an area of the Blacks in Wax Museum called the Middle Passage, and it's in the basement. It's been a while since I've been there, but if it's still the same, which it probably is if it haven't expanded even more, to include so many other feats in Black excellence and Black history. But the basement was called the Middle Passage, and you had to be 18 or older to go into the basement or accompanied by a parent or guardian if you were under the age of 18. But I was in elementary school, and my parents took me down into the Middle Passage and learned, so many histories of the atrocities. And when you start out at the entrance point, now mind you, it's been a long time since I've been at the Blacks in Wax Museum, but as soon as you get into the entrance point at the Blacks in Wax Museum, the first thing you see when you walk through, you pay your admissions, all of that, get your wristbands or whatever they do now, and you walk through, and it's the first wax figure is a huge elephant. And you have Hannibal of Carthage on the elephant. And most people don't even know, especially Black people don't even know who Hannibal of Carthage is, how he took elephants through the Swiss Alps into Rome and conquered. You see what I'm saying? So even not just because a lot of times I know talking about slavery and the transatlantic slave trade and everything that happened to the indigenous people and the Africans from the diaspora, that it's kind of a, people don't like talking about it because A, it's uncomfortable, too, it's a narrative that you hear over and over again. I don't want to mischaracterize what the Blacks in Wax Museum is. They talk about that, but they also talk about the beautiful history of who we were before slavery ever came into play. So I encourage everybody, if you haven't go to the Blacks in Wax Museum. The reason why I bring that up, though, because the more and more you learn about history, the more and more you learn how history favors the victor. And for the large portion of recent history, the European has been the victor. So they tell a version of history that paint them in a light of excellence that's just not the reality of what it was. The Moors traveled all through Europe, and they literally civilized Europe. When the Moors came out of northern Africa into parts of Europe and Spain, they were literally, it was feces lined in the streets. It was feces in their drinking water. They were living so uncivilized before the Moors came in and gave them civilization, gave them hygiene, gave them decency. So that's the part of history that get omitted. But the more and more, again, we live in an age of data, the more and more information come out, the more and more people are talking about just how misinformed and just how much propaganda has been created around the influence of the European in the history. I always talk about it because there's so many things that people need to be made aware of as it pertains to that. One of my homies hit me up and was like, yo, I seen, I did a little research after the Gladiator 2 movie came out because I didn't know that Denzel Washington's character was based on a real person. I didn't know it was Black people all in Rome during that time. And I was like, of course, because that's the history of it's so much I would literally I could do a whole 2-hour episode, 3-hour episode just on that type of conversation, centered around it. So it's so much that we don't know. But yes, it was black people in Rome or people from African descent. Because I know how we feel, depending on how you identify yourself. I know how you feel about the terminology black. So just, again, no matter how you classify it, there were people that were descendants of Africa that was traveled all through Europe, in civilized Europe. I've mentioned in a previous episode a book called They Came Before Columbus. I encourage everybody to get it and read it. There was commerce and travel going through from the continent of Africa to what's known as North and South America for years, way before, I'm talking about centuries before Columbus ever came into to what became known as the New World. And it's admitted in Columbus's own diary. The Africans know a way to the Western world, but it will require us going through the doldrum, and we would never survive. Like, this is the type of stuff this is the type of information that's out there, and is now being exposed. We praise so many people for so many things, but when you start looking at the history, you'll realize, oh, this is a history that has been told by the victor. Therefore, it's not a true account of the history that's taking place. Thomas Edison gets so much credit for so many inventions. And a lot of the inventions that he's credited for was actually Tesla and Westinghouse and other people. The greatest thing, now this is the opinion of Kay Nellz, nobody else. The greatest thing that the European invented was the contract. I'll say that again. The greatest thing that the European ever invented was the contract. Whether it's through patent law, whether it's through intellectual property, whether it's through a legal contract. They have done more to commandeer true innovation and ingenuity from people that were actually the minds advancing these ideas than anything in the world. And you can look at it across every landscape. That's why present day, black people create everything, IP, intellectual property, but own nothing. We don't own the platforms. We don't own the streaming services. We don't own the production companies. The only thing we own is the cool and ingenuity that it takes to create it. But once we create it, we then forfeit it over to the powers that be that own it through the form of a contract. This right here has created has stolen more than anything in the world. Asians had the chemical known as, I'll call it gunpowder for its description, but that chemical has existed in antiquity in Asia. I'm talking about for dynasties, for centuries. And they never created a gun or a bullet. They never created a bomb or a cannon. The European get gunpowder in a single generation. They create death and destruction from it. And this is just accurate depictions of what it is. Recent information came out about the Neanderthal gene. Science discovered that there is a Neanderthal gene. And guess who is the only people that don't have a Neanderthal gene? Surprise, surprise. It's so evident that history has been telling a tale that favors the victor, but now the unintended consequence of too much information. We live in an age where information is the greatest commodity, and the more and more that information get out, you have people coming out and willing to tell the truth. Remember, the truth don't need a cosign. It don't need a rallying cry. It don't need anything but somebody bold enough to stand 10 toes and tell it. So the more and more we pay attention to the accounts of history that's being given, that's why they're working so feverishly to control how information is being taught, even through the public school system. Because the more control they have over that, the more they can continue a propagandized narrative of what is versus the realities of what will be. So with that being said, that's why you have so much misinformation. That's why you have so much people coming out now that's telling the truth about things like the Victorian era and how, whether it's Bridgerton or whatever, every movie is you come out, you see it so romanticized. And it's like, underneath that corset, when the last time you bathed? They probably did, because that's the times that they was living in. So it's very important. Self-awareness is a gift. I encourage everybody please go out, especially us. Like I said, I love all people. I have an affinity for my people. I have an affinity for black people because I want to raise the collective consciousness of us as a people. So I encourage everybody to go out to do your own due diligence, do your own research, learn the power and the majestic nature of who we are in our history, because it's so robust and so, so colorful, and it's so much to be prideful about. I know the easiest go-to is to talk about the pyramids and stuff like that, and I never want to downplay that, because those are magnificent feats, right? But there's already propaganda campaigns that have people feeling like the pyramids was gift from aliens. So I encourage you to even go beyond the pyramids to truly learn the essence of the ingenuity and all of the things that came out of the existence of us as people of that African continent and throughout the diaspora. I encourage that of all people. But it's beautiful to see, because the truth is coming to the light. And like I said, when you're dealing with the truth, the unadulterated truth, it don't matter who tell it. It don't need no rallying cry. It don't need no cosign. It don't need no commercial. It just needs somebody willing to stand 10 toes, hold your ground, and tell the truth. And so the more and more you see that type of information come out, the more and more you see there is a great awakening. And now we can begin to learn the truths of who we are and why we're so powerful and why we have been targeted throughout centuries and centuries of human existence. But again, one thing that's true, this is based off of your science, not mine. There is a Neanderthal gene that exists in the Homo sapien erectus, whatever they call it. There is a Neanderthal gene that exists in humans, just not us. Now, what does that mean? I only bring that up to say, when you talk about a caveman, when you talk about the dwellings and the propaganda that's been created by the caveman, I can assure you, when the Neanderthal was in a cave, we were building civilization. The first colleges, the first institutions, surgeries, doctors take the Hippocratic Oath. Hippocrates got all his game from where? Kemet. There is so much information that's available, that's coming to the light now. So please, I'm gonna close it by saying to everybody what my mother said to me. Don't go out and seek. Don't wait for anybody to teach you anything. Be a seeker, be a lover of information, because when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So when you have that love for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, you don't have to wait for somebody to teach you anything. The energy that your love, wisdom, and understanding creates is going to draw that to you. It's a Chinese proverb that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I share that with you. So go with that energy. When you're ready, make everything in life a teachable moment. There's so much information out there. We're going to continue to learn, and we're going to continue to grow. This is The World According to Kay Nellz. Y'all know the drill by now, but I'm going to still say it. I am yours truly, Kay Nellz. So let's talk about hip hop. It's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years over the origins of hip hop. Hip hop has been a genre of music, like every black genre of music, that come from that underbelly of the struggle of the black experience in America. And so hip hop is no exception to that, going all the way back to we can call one of the first genres of music, which was the Negro spiritual. And that itself was indicative of the struggle. It was a coded language that we would speak to one another. It would give instruction about where an event was taking place, a revolt was taking place. If we're leaving and we're fleeing and we're running away, we did going all the way back to the Negro spiritual. I paint this perspective to lay the foundation for the conversation that we're about to have, because the essence of Black culture has always been represented by the art and the music and the culture that we created from it. So with that being said, there's been so many talks over the last couple of years over the origins and who was instrumental in the creation of hip hop, because as it stands right now, hip hop is the most successful genre of music. Hip hop is the most profitable genre of music. Hip hop is the biggest genre of music globally. That's not my speculation. That's just streaming numbers, so on and so forth. There is a group of people that believe that it was that both Caribbean people and Latino people equally influenced, along with Black Americans, the creation of hip hop and rap music. Now, let me make some things understood. I have to have this conversation twofold. Like I said, I always like to take a macro and a micro view. So I want to look at it subjectively and objectively. A lot of this conversation, for those people that's familiar, if you've seen any of the Hidden Color documentaries, Tariq Nasheed did the Hidden Colors documentary, and from there, he's been able to parlay that into a social media presence and platform and so on and so forth. So because that's the foundation that he built, it's really about Black political awareness, Black social awareness, Black economic awareness. He really stands and builds and lives off of that platform. So because of that, he created a documentary about the origins of hip hop. And in talking about it, he do his due diligence and research, as he always do, to make the clear distinction that although later on down the line, both Caribbean and both Latino people in culture had an influence on growing hip hop and rap music as we know it, the foundations of it was built by Black Americans in the inner cities of New York. Why is this a talking point? Why is this a point of contention? Why is it a conversation? Several reasons. Again, I have to speak to the idea of FBA, right? FBA is an acronym that stands for Foundational Black American, meaning these were Black Americans that direct descendants of slavery or indigenous people here in this continent of North America, and not children of immigrants that came here willingly. We are the descendants of people that came here unwillingly via the transatlantic slave trade or the enslavement or attempted eradication of the indigenous people that existed in the continent before the arrival of Christopher Columbus and so forth. Why are we delineating the diaspora? That's the question. So before I talk hip hop, I want to have a conversation about this delineation between, foundational Black Americans versus, people of the diaspora versus Latino and Hispanic culture and so forth. I have several different feelings about it. Where do I even begin? So I feel like it's important to delineate. All right, let me start it off like this. At the end of the day, I believe and understand that the power is only going to come from our unity as a diaspora. the growth and evolution that we want to experience and we want to begin to build and propagate, it requires there be an understanding of unity and togetherness throughout the diaspora, right? That is different, that is misaligned when you begin to delineate between whether you were where the slave ship dropped you off at, if the slave ship got you at all. The reality is, no matter how you slice it, all of us are, whether advertently or directly or indirectly, we are products of colonialism. So the reason why the biggest population of Africans outside of the continent is Brazil, and they speak Portuguese. The reason why they speak Portuguese is because the Portuguese colonized that portion of South America through the transatlantic slave trade and so many other things. The reason why Central America speaks Spanish is because Spain colonized Central America. The reason why North America speaks English is because Great Britain colonized North America. The reason why parts of Canada speak French is because France colonized parts of Canada. The reason why African nations speak French is because it's the French that colonized. The reason why some of the Caribbean nations have French allegiance is because the French colonized. The reason why some of them have European allegiance is because Great Britain colonized. Once you start looking at it through that lens, you realize that all of us are products in some form or fashion of colonialism. So if we're going to create any delineation, the only delineation should be those of us that have been colonized versus the colonizer. That's it. There truly should be no other delineation when you talk about the liberation of us as a people. But for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to make those distinctions so there could be a clear understanding of what's going on, why it's going on, and how we can overcome it and be better suited to deal with what comes with that. And then we'll talk, and that'll lead us straight into the brother by the name of, or I should say the man by the name of Joseph Cartagena. Now, or Cartagena. Now, so foundational Black Americans built the essence of hip hop. You can go all the way back, and the reason why I have even before Tariq Nasheed made the documentary, the reason why I would have this conversation with people all the time is because I wanted people to understand the origins of creative expression. It was never about invalidating anybody else's input as much as it was talking about the beauty of artistic expression. So you can go all the way back to the early 1900s and listen to the Harlem Renaissance era and listen to scatting. And if you listen to scat and listen to present day mumble rap, they're brothers and sisters. You can see the evolution of one into the other. When you go back and listen to, like, I love talking about their era. Like, I joke all the time and tell people the first rapper was actually Muhammad Ali. Because when you hear him say, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, the hands can't hit what the eyes can't see, that's cadence, that's rhythm, that's our definition of freestyle. Rap wasn't around technically in the 60s. But what Muhammad Ali was doing was show enough by the definition of what we do, putting that pen to pad. Oh, it was free verse, 100%. When you listen to James Brown, when you listen to the Big Payback, he rapping. As talented as James Brown is, rest in peace to the legends, James Brown was rapping. So I always will bring up the history of the origins of rap for the sake of talking about the importance of creative expression and the evolution that transpired over the years. So now by the time you get to the 70s, when rap began as a genre, you just see scatting, Muhammad Ali, what he was doing, what James Brown was doing. You see that now in a more formal interpretation. But the essence of it always existed. So now, whether it's Busta Rhymes, who's a Jamaican American, whether it's Fat Joe, who's a Puerto Rican, and so many others, you hear them now talking about this narrative of how much that the origins of hip hop was 50-50 influence of both Latin culture and Latino culture and Caribbean culture. And I'm never, ever, ever denying the impact and input, because they do have impact and input in hip hop culture. But when you talk about the origins of it, the origins of what the genre of music is, like every genre of music, is come out of the culture and the experience of what is now being called or referred to as foundational Black Americans. Both things can be true. That's why I feel like all in all, my sense of it is just a stupid argument to have. But I understand why the argument needs to be had. Although I don't agree with it, I understand it. The reason why you're seeing delineation between the diaspora is because for people that's born in this country, like myself, to descendants of slavery, and unlike many people, I've actually been able to trace the lineage of who I am on maternally and paternally, on my mother and father's side, going all the way back to that time frame, and then even going as far as understanding through my genetic markers where I came from on the continent, and looking at the genetic cues to see what culture that I come from in the continent of Africa previous to slavery. So I'm aware of that on a completely different level. But it's tough. It becomes a more difficult conversation because the system of, and I know I sound like a broken record, but it's so important to just be honest about the conversation. The system of white supremacy has created an environment that as long as we're fighting against one another, we don't acknowledge the system of white supremacy. And as long as we don't acknowledge it to threaten its existence, then it will keep operating in the condition that it's been operating in. So that's why when I gave the interpretation that I gave earlier, there should only be colonized versus the colonizer, that should be the only delineation. That's the reason why I say that. But we can't even get to that point because you have all of the other little small delineations. Well, I'm from Jamaica, I'm from the Bahamas, I'm from St. Thomas, I'm from Venezuela, I'm from Brazil, I'm from the Dominican Republic, I'm from Haiti, and all of that, when you start to do the history and you look at the history of the indigenous people, you will realize there's only two true delineations: colonized versus the colonizer. So how does that relate to hip hop? Fat Joe was recently on a podcast where he said some very irresponsible things because he's mad at people that follow, like Tariq Nasheed, or people that follow the ideology of a Tariq Nasheed, who makes it a point to delineate that hip hop is a function and origin of the foundational Black American experience. It's so many different ways he could have handled that, but he didn't. He chose to speak ignorantly. And when you speak ignorantly, you have to deal with the ramifications of your words and subsequently your actions. So to say that FBA, this is Fat Joe's words, is just some broke niggas, first of all, Don Cartagena, Joseph Cartagena, you out of pocket anyway. I don't even like you saying nigga because I know where your position stand. You still talking as a mouthpiece of the type of white supremacy division, and you don't even see you're being complicit in your own division. So I'm on your neck like that because it'd be one thing if you showed the responsibility to a culture in a way that promotes and uplifts the culture. You don't. You are drawing clear lines in the sand, create division, because you have people coming out there say, hey, I know that you feel like, based on the stories that you know, that the origins of the creation of hip hop is equally Caribbean and Latino as it is Black American. And then you have Black Americans that was actually present for the foundation of hip hop to say, no, it started with us. Everybody else came along after. Both things are okay. Like, what are we talking about? And the reason why that argument has me that much even more upset is because despite who created it, guess who owned it? Not black people, not Hispanic and Latino people, and not Caribbean people. So what are we really talking about? Again, divide and conquer. If we keep on focusing on building walls on the basis of which we're different, as opposed to building bridges on the foundations of which we're alike, then we're never ever going to achieve the level of liberation that we should as a people, because we too busy fighting each other over nothing. Because whether you're foundational Black American, whether you're Caribbean, whether you Latinx or Latino or however it is you identify yourself respectfully, whether you're an African immigrant coming over, because the same conversations, similar conversations arise with Afrobeat as well. So it's like, we talking about all of these things, but when you boil down to it, we don't own the production companies, we don't own the record labels, we don't own the streaming services, we don't own the entertainment companies. So what are we really fighting over? What are we really fussing over? The crumbs that's left. What we really need to be doing is empowering one another, building one another, so we can create ownership and equity, so that we can control the narratives around the conversations that we have. But when you have so many counter narratives being created based off of misinformation, then that's what starts to create rifts in between the people that's supposed to be working together. Fat Joe wild out of pocket for the comments that he made on a podcast, and I don't care how you feel about it. But from my perspective, he been talking recklessly about Black Americans specifically over the last couple of years. Every little interview is little shots here and there. And it's like, you are a direct beneficiary of Black culture, no matter how you want to slice it, because hip hop, no matter how you want to slice it, is a product of Black culture. Now, what I'm encouraging, my call to action, what I'm encouraging everybody to do, I don't care if you Fat Joe, Busta Rhymes, Tariq Nasheed, or whoever else, what I'm encouraging everybody to do, Jay-Z and everybody else included, and Jay-Z attempted to do something similar to this with Tidal, but we have to create uniformity so we can create ownership and we can create equity amongst the people that actually create and participate in the culture. Because right now, hip hop culture is owned by people that neither create or participate in the culture. They just strictly profit from it, and we continue to make them rich and settle for the crumbs that they've been giving us. And that's the biggest travesty of this whole conversation. The biggest travesty of this whole conversation. So it truly saddens me that we have to talk about it, but yes, it is still a necessary conversation. One thing that I want to touch on and shed light on from a Black perspective in this country. I have love, patience, and compassion. I have love, patience, and compassion for all of my people throughout the diaspora. Although I understand foundational Black American logic and ideology, although I understand why Tariq Nasheed feel how he feel on a lot of the issues, I lean more towards a Pan-Africanist perspective, in the sense that our uniformity as the diaspora of people is what's going to lead to true liberation, versus creating delineations and divisions in the sand that separates us. I respect and I understand the different perspectives, because as I'm a foundational Black American by its definition. But I've had the unique experience of not only living in different parts of this country, but also having a circle of influence that includes not only Caribbean people, but also includes Hispanic people and Latino people, that also includes African people from the continent as well. And because of that robust perspective, because of my circle of influence, and because of my unique experiences, I'm able to see the beauty in all of us as a people. And no matter how many ways we appear to be different, all I see is the similarities. Whether I'm talking to somebody from, Jamaican culture, and I'm understanding Caribbean culture through the lens of Jamaica, a very prideful people, right? And it's like, it's so many things that from a cultural nuance standpoint look like when I'm visiting or when I'm kicking it? It looked like just like my uncles kicking it, like my grandmother and my aunts kicking it. Like the patois is different from the slang that we speak, but the messages of love be the same. When I'm, kicking it with my Nigerian family, and I'm at their household and I'm peeping their celebrations and how they interact, man, it looked just like how my grandmother and my parents interact. It looked like the things that I seen growing up in the ghettos of America. The slang is different. Little Igbo, little Ifa, like it's different, right? But the message of love be exactly the same. So after having those experiences, I'm saying to myself, like, why would I waste time delineating my experience as a Black American from all of those experiences when the main thing that we have in common is we are products directly or indirectly of colonization? So why not take issue with the system that colonizes, that still exists? These systems still exist today. Why not take issue with the systems of colonization as opposed to beefing with people that has been colonized just like me and my people? So that's why my perspective is different. But that's also why I can understand the frustrations of a Tariq Nasheed or people that align with the foundational Black American experience, because you sit back and you see, like I watched my parents struggle in this country and be model citizens by, all intents and purpose, by definition, and never having ownership, never being able to get a loan or never being able to do this or do that. And then I see the experience of my friends who are Caribbean immigrants or Jamaican immigrants or children of Caribbean immigrants or children of Nigerian immigrants, and I see, and they have ownership and they own things and they're able to take the what they're getting and send it back home and build community and build wealth. And it's like I watch my parents scratch and claw to try to do the same thing, but be met with a resistance that they don't. Only for a lot of times those Caribbean immigrants or African immigrants or immigrants from the diaspora get to a point and still look at us through the lens of white supremacy to say, what's wrong with these niggas? So that's why to hear Fat Joe say FBA is just some broke niggas, that's why it's so disheartening, because it echoes the sentiments that I've seen on display as it pertains to how white supremacy functioned through the immigration of other Black people throughout the diaspora, because it's very important that we understand the glass ceiling, this proverbial glass ceiling. It's important that we put a few of you on a pedestal so that you can look down. Because when you give a man someone to look down on, you don't see that you being looked down on. So it's important that they create that distinction so they can say, see, I told y'all there was something wrong with these niggas. That Nigerian immigrant come over here, get to the bag, no problem, create life for themselves, buy things, own things, businesses, etc. That Caribbean immigrant come over here, I told you there was something wrong with you niggas in here in America already, because the Caribbean immigrant come through, no problem. The Asian immigrant come through, no problem. So immigrants have been used, unfortunately, as a pawn of white supremacy to enforce a level of classism that enforces racism and prejudice, not knowing that there's only two delineations, the colonized and the colonizer. And most of us, more often than not, are victims in some way of colonization. But because we got a little bit, because we up on a pedestal, we hear, we experience certain things, we got certain comforts, we don't look at it through that lens. And the whole time, we're equally being played. So, as I said before, and I'll continue to say, as much as I don't like having a conversation because of the amount of division that it creates, it's a very important conversation to have. And I'm very disappointed in whether it's Fat Joe or Busta Rhymes or any of the people that's pushing the narrative of separatism and division based off of the origins of hip hop. When no matter who founded it, none of those people own it present day. We have larger problems. We have bigger fish to fry. I want to leave you with this talking point. So it's a social experiments have been done in so many different forms and facets. This one is no different. So I've heard it interpreted two ways. You can, whichever way is fine for you. I've heard crickets and I've heard fleas. I'm going to use the cricket analogy. So you can take a bunch of crickets, right? Let's say 10 crickets. You can put them in a clear container, and then you put a transparent top on that container. Now, it is the very nature of the cricket to do what? Jump. It's almost defined. When you look at the anatomy of a cricket and its legs, how large its legs is, in conjunction, how long its legs is in conjunction to its body, its frame, everything about its anatomy seems to be built to be able to jump and for that type of agility. So when you put crickets, these 10 crickets in a clear container, and you put that clear top over it, the very thing in its nature is to jump. So what do you think the cricket do once it's in that container? It jumps. But every time it jumps, what do you think happens to the cricket inside that container with that clear top on it? It keeps hitting the top. So much so that it keeps hitting the top until ultimately it says, there is something stopping me from being able to jump the way I want to jump. So the very thing that defines the nature of the cricket, it abandons because of the conditions that you place that cricket in. The very thing that make the cricket a cricket, it abandons because of the conditions of its environment. Now, once that takes place and that cricket stops jumping, you can remove the lid off of that clear container, and you never, ever, 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 ever have to worry about the cricket jumping out of that container again, because it has been conditioned by the environment that it was put in to feel like no matter how much I jump, I will never make it out of this container. Now, you got those 10 crickets that have been conditioned. We're going to take an unconditioned cricket, one single unconditioned cricket, and you put them in that container, and you don't put the top back on it. What do you think that cricket do? Of course, it jumps. That cricket jumps out. Now, when that cricket jumps out, guess what the other crickets say? Oh shit, the top ain't there no more. And guess what the other crickets do? Follow suit and jump out. Now, how does the glass ceiling play into that metaphor? Well, let's say you put that untrained cricket in there, right? And that untrained cricket jump out. And right after that untrained cricket jump out, you put the top back on it. And then now those crickets begin to jump again because they think they can get out, only to be met with that glass ceiling, that clear top. What happens is the cricket that jumped out that was untrained, they look back and say, what's wrong with them niggas? Why ain't you just jump out like me? You see, I came in there. I was in the same conditions that you was in the same environment that you in. I was able to jump out. Why you ain't able to jump out? Not knowing that right after they jumped out, that clear container was placed right back on top of the trained crickets. That's the metaphor that I use to talk about the delineation of the foundational Black American experience versus the experience of immigrants that come into the country and they're able to create some sort of economic infrastructure for their families and their communities to get out the conditions that they've been put in. This conversation can be and needs to be had on so many levels. Because one thing that I always talk about, you have gene and you have gene expression. So when you talk about on a genetic level, because I told you it's the very nature of the cricket to do what? Jump. That is a genetic level. I can take that same metaphor even deeper to talk about how the conditions then replicate the same trauma. Genetically, once the conditions have robbed the cricket of its sense of awareness to say, I've always been able to jump and be free. Why can't I jump now? That lack of awareness of the clear top over the container. There's a concept, there's an idea called epigenetics. And epigenetics is, I told you there's gene and there's gene expression. You know what impacts gene more than anything in gene expression is environment. The environment shapes the experience. So the cricket is just a cricket. It is what it is genetically. You can alter the genetics of that cricket by putting them in an environment that deprives them of the very nature that makes them who they are. And then once you deprive them of that, obviously it becomes an existential crisis now, because the thing that I identified myself that made me feel like a cricket, I no longer have, because the conditions upon which I've been put in deprive me of that. So now, let's say the crickets remain in that. In that. And let's say one of those crickets is just bold enough to be like, I'm gonna figure out a way to get out. And periodically they remove that top and put it back on. A cricket slip out. That cricket, because it's been deprived of genetically, right? That cricket will get out and do the same thing that the untrained cricket did and say, I made it out, why can't y'all? Not knowing that they was let out because that's the only way the glass ceiling worked. Hope is the most dangerous idea to people in despair, because it creates this notion that if I hold on to something, hope breeds inaction. It's a beggar. Like if I could just hope my way out of my circumstances. And then if they replicate children genetically, what you think happened to the children? If they lay eggs as crickets in those same conditions, if they lay eggs as children to children in those same conditions, they don't even have to teach the children not to jump, because epigenetically, that has been passed down through the trauma of the experience by being conditioned by the clear container. I truly hope, I know that was a lot, but I truly hope y'all followed me in that metaphor, because that's what I mean when I talk about the conditions that create the environment, that create the pathology or the way of thinking, that creates the action, that breeds the conditions that we have to live in and thrive in and exist in as Black people within this country, as Black people throughout the diaspora. Although the foundational Black American experience is unique to foundational Black Americans, it's truly not, because when you go into other parts of the diaspora, you realize when you go into Jamaica, it's the same colonial trauma. It's the same colonized trauma. When you go into any parts of the Caribbean, you realize it's the same colonized trauma. When you go over to Africa and you see the devastation that's going on in Africa, it's multiplied a billionfold times what we have to go through here in this country. But nonetheless, the pathology, the colonized pathology that ravages Africa is the same colonized pathology that ravages the inner cities, the ghettos of America. And every time the victims of that pathology look like me, the victims of that way of thinking look like me. So if y'all remember Andre 3000 in the last Outkast performance, I believe was at Coachella, he had on the jumpsuit with the different quotes and sayings on it. And I believe the one jumpsuit said, around the world, Black, darker people suffer most. Why? It was around the world, darker people suffer most, comma, why? Question mark. And it's true. No matter where you go on this world, you find the indigenous people of any land, you find the darkest complected people of any land, and they're the ones that are suffering the most and disenfranchised the most because of the functions of colonization, because of the pathology of white supremacy that has been perpetuated and propagandized globally. And we're all living in some form of fashion, directly or indirectly, dealing with those things. So when it comes to hip hop, I felt it necessary to speak on Fat Joe, obviously because of the recent comments that he made. But more importantly, I felt the need to speak to the mentality, because I understand the mentality that creates a Fat Joe. I understand the mentality that creates a Tariq Nasheed. I understand why they feel the way they feel. But it's important that I encourage us to table all of that nonsense and figure out how we can build bridges to edify one another, because it's through that edification and it's through that unity and uniformity that we'll be able to create the infrastructure necessary to own and have equity in the things that we create. Until we do that, we're going to ever be fighting each other and creating delineations that really don't mean anything in the grander scheme of things. With that being said, as always, master of the room. Hey, yo, listen. Salute to the legend Rick James, yo. I gotta make sure. Never mind who you thought I was. I told you the Master the Room merch is coming soon. It'll be graphic tees like the one that you see I have on. Master the Room logo. You have an opportunity to be a thermostat or a thermometer in every room that you go in. You wanna make sure you master the room. You wanna make sure you be that and continue to grow. This is Icons and Ideas presents The World According to Kay Nellz. I am yours truly, Kay Nellz. Thank you for rocking with me. The laws of thermodynamics say energy can neither be created nor destroyed but transferred. That means if you need good energy, guess what? I got it. And if you got good energy, guess what? I need it.
In a Mason, Margielas, unreleased color palettes, make them all jealous. You could buy the drip, but the swag so separate. Ponytail poppy, now I sport the fade. Woke up one morning, said it's time for a change. I am one of one, my name is my name. Cartier, cedar core, vintage wood frames. Everything clear when you living in the air. In the pilot on call, press a button and you there. Or your car got a roof, press a button, disappear. On the coupe, like poof, everything I do is rare, but I swear, if you could walk a mile in my shoes, you would stop it. If you could pull the bitches that I pull, you be solid. Manifesting everything I am, I'm a prophet. And when it comes to that bottom line, I want profit.
I say get down when I say you get